Hi, welcome to Jesus-Centric Leadership. I'm Donna, and I'm here with Pastor Josh, and we have a special guest with us. We have Brad Hueske. Welcome to the table.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Now, today we're going to talk about this thing called the title or the towel. What do you think about that, Pastor?
Yeah, I think this one was your idea. A lot of these were, just let's be honest. But I just talk and say things. I'm not as creative. But it comes from a story, right? And I think this is one of your favorite Bible stories. So I thought maybe we would just have you tell the Bible story if you want to.
Yeah, I always say there's 2 times in Scripture that I really wish I could have been there. And one is Moses when he got to look over the promised land, and we could talk about that a whole nother day. But the other one is Jesus washing the feet of the disciples. And I used to kind of blow over that story a little bit because, and then he washed the disciples' feet, and, and then it kind of moves on. Yeah, like, oh, that's nice. And then I talked to a missionary, and he asked such a simple question. He goes, how many disciples did Jesus wash the feet of?
Oh.
Okay, so what's the answer?
Well, I kind of assumed he did all of the 12 that were there that night.
He did, but we don't really stop to think about it, right?
Right.
So that means from Peter, wash all of me, Jesus, right? Uh-huh. To who?
Well, doubting
Judas.
Thomas and Judas.
And Judas. Yeah, and then I'm like, being the ADD brain I am, right? I'm like, was the water lukewarm? Did he use the dirtiest water?
Did he do him last on purpose?
Yeah. Was it as soapy as everybody else's? Did he squeeze a little bit and look him in the eye like, dude, don't do this?
Twist his ankle a little?
Right. But then I have a cousin who used to work with a Bible study fellowship at the University of Texas. And he did a whole talk on the title or the towel. And even that title itself, like, did Jesus choose the title or did he choose the towel?
Yeah.
Wow. And it just kind of stopped me right there. And even Judas, he chose the towel, not the title.
Yeah.
And I think that really ties in, I think, to this leadership and this topic that we're talking about, and what we want our leaders to see is leadership. Yeah, leadership is great. I say with a question mark. Like, there's days it's not so great, right? I mean, we get a privilege to sit in the best seat to watch God at work. I always say it's the seat with the free drinks and the food, and, they're like, can I get you anything else? And there's no bill, right? And we just get to watch and look on the field as God works. And that's so cool. But servant leadership, that means I just don't get to sit in the seat.
Yeah.
Now I gotta serve. And
yeah, and I think before we go, to kind of share more of our thoughts on it, I want to develop the scriptural narrative of this one just a little bit more, because there's a place in the Bible in Matthew 20 where James and John, they're 2 of the disciples of Jesus. Their mother actually comes, which is always awkward when your mother speaks for their son. Like, that's never a good look. You don't send your mom to your boss. But besides that, the mom asks, let my sons, they're so important and so significant to you, Jesus, let them sit at the right and the left hand when you come into your glory. And what their mom wants is she wants the title for them,
yep.
Right? She not only wants them to be with Jesus, but she wants them to be the most significant sons, which, great. Your mom wants you to succeed. Way to go, Mom.
All parents should want that for their children.
Yeah, but it's interesting what Jesus says. Is he ends. He has a lot of stuff, but he says at the end, he says, "Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many." And so what Jesus really is he's adding that theology that then he's going to live out later when he washes the disciples' feet. But really, his whole point of his ministry is not that he served, not that he has a position, not that he has a title, but that he serves others. And we see that throughout Jesus. And that's, as Christ followers, we're supposed to follow Christ as we lead others.
Mm-hmm.
When you were saying that, I thought back to last summer, and we were in Florida, Fort Myers, doing a mission trip. And the family that we served was just amazing. But the dad was super humble. And it was really interesting when the hurricane hit, they could see the waters rushing. So they looked down the street and just saw this mass amount of water. Now we think water, we don't realize alligators and snakes, and they eventually had to walk through all of that water. But he said they jumped up on their countertops, and they literally rode the storm out on their countertops. And then when it receded a little bit and they knew it was time to get off and try to get to higher land, he said, I knew we were in trouble. And how were we going to do this? And with tears in his eyes, he looked at my students and he goes, and then God started sending people. And I knew we were going to be okay. And he goes, and they didn't want anything from us. They just wanted to come and serve us. And that is very humbling. My students and myself, just tears in our eyes, because, again, you know, we don't do it for that. We do it because this is what God's calling us to, but we get the privilege to serve. And that, man, the hope that gives.
Yeah, and so I guess to ask this question, and maybe we'll jump to you, Brad, because we've been talking a lot, which we can do as church workers. But and you know, Donna, your thoughts on it too. But why do you think it's easier to seek the title or the position over the serving?
Well, because you get that reward of, it feels good to be recognized.
Yeah.
When you know, it's always a little awkward. You know, everyone kind of gets kind of shy, and they're recognizing me, they're talking about me, but there's also a release of chemicals in your brain that makes you feel good, that, somebody is acknowledging my success, my accomplishments. Yeah. But working is hard. It's painful sometimes. You know, Jesus got down on the floor to wash his disciples' feet. That's not comfortable. So serving is painful. It doesn't give you that pleasurable release of chemicals in your brain like you get when somebody recognizes your good works.
Yes. Yeah, because I could also tell you stories of where students have gone to serve. They never saw the homeowner. They never saw the people. For whatever reason, they were working or whatever, didn't get that gratitude. And it's hard. Yeah. You know, you're in a home in Fort Myers, Florida, and it's hot, and there's no air conditioning, and wow, why did I do this? But that's God's seed that he's planting. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, and I think that the reality of it is serving doesn't always feel good in the moment. Like serving is one of those, you know, we can talk about the phrase delayed gratification thing, right? When you're doing it, it's like, why did I agree to do this? Why did I sign up? This is kind of, you know, it's hard, you know, sweating. It's hard giving up myself, or it's hard, you know, showing up to do this in my community or at church or for my neighbors when I would rather be, you know, watching TV or on my phone or whatever. And but it's hard in the moment to serve. It is.
So when is a time that you guys have experienced servant leadership outside of your family? Because I think we could all use experiences where our family served us very graciously, but when's a time that somebody was a servant leader in your life?
So again, I'm not a church worker, so I work in construction where I work with a lot of people who aren't Christians, but that doesn't mean that they can't still be serving God. And I have a foreman who is a phenomenal boss, and he always is working in the background. He takes the drawings, takes the blueprints, and translates them into something that we can understand. And I never realized how much work he did to make our lives easier. As the journeyman and the apprentices out in the field putting work, you know, doing the work, I didn't see how much effort went in behind the scenes. And I had a chance to experience being a foreman for a short time and realized, oh my goodness, this is so much more work. And I went and I talked to this foreman and I said, hey, I never realized how much work you were doing in the background to make my life easier. And he looked at me and he said, well, I want you guys to be successful. So I'm going to do the hard stuff And I'm not going to ask you to recognize it, because if I do the hard stuff and do it right, you should never know that I did it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really well said. Yeah, no, I mean, I could talk about lots of just a simple little one. Our neighbors, whenever we go on vacation, they offer to grab our mail.
Yeah.
Right, and that's simple, right? It's, it'd be easy to have the post office stop it, but then we have to remember it. But we'll be like leaving for town and we'll like forget to do it. And our neighbor will be like, I'll just grab it for you. Our mailboxes are right next to each other. And, and just, that's simple. But yeah, lots of, I could talk about, we moved into our house when I first became pastor here, and we had all these people over to help us paint. And then, and the weed carpet in the basement, and Donna gets some people to rip it out. Why I'm up at church because it's Saturday evening service, and I come back and the weed carpet's all gone. And, but lots of people that just, stepped up to help us move into our house. People that unloaded, yeah.
I think for me, it was a student. His name's Troy, and when I was going through the divorce, he's in middle school at this time, and he would stop me in the hall almost weekly and say, how are Josh and Caitlin doing? How are you? And I remember it wasn't like just in passing. He would be so intentional, like look me in the eye and to just love my family and love me and check in. And a middle schooler, right? And I was so thankful for that. He's graduating now, and I'm really going to miss him, but I just told him just always how grateful I was for his love for me and for my family, and for kind of crossing that line of, here's my adult confirmation leader, my DCE, to speaking to me as a friend and somebody who really loved my family. It meant a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a beautiful idea right there, that story, because we all, when you greet someone, you ask them, how are you doing? How's it going? But we don't mean anything by it, right? Yeah. You ask someone, how are you doing? But you're really just saying good morning or hello.
Right.
For somebody to actually stop and legitimately be interested in, how are you doing?
Right. And because of his sincerity, I would say things like, it's hard right now. Or, hey, keep them in your prayers, and I thank you so much for asking. I wouldn't get all deep and heavy, but, it means a lot.
Yeah, and so I think the reality, and I love that you bring that up, because, both of us, we jump to, work, right? That work is a way to serve, right? That, the thinking work or the, jumping into my house and ripping stuff out, but I think, the relational gift of serving we have to give too, right?
Yeah.
That's what, because a lot of people say, well, I don't have energy for that. I'm too old, and my days of ripping carpet out of your basement, pastor, they're gone. But how can you serve someone by praying for them, or by checking in on them, or by giving them a phone call? Those are ways that you can serve people as well.
Yeah, and the common denominator becomes relationships.
Yeah.
Those people wouldn't have come to your house if they didn't care about you and see that relationship is important. You've loved your neighbor well. That's why he wants to help you out. You see the value in that relationship, so you want to affirm him.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big deal. And isn't that the same relationship, as the disciples are walking down the road and they're having this discussion of who among them is the greatest, right? It's the relationship that keeps Jesus from throwing down and go, are you kidding me? What is wrong with you? Or if he did do that, they kept that out of Scripture.
Yeah, well, and I think the other thing that's fascinating, too, about this text that I brought up is the mother asks Jesus, will you put them on my left and my right when I come into your glory? And a lot of times we see Jesus' glory as when he's on the throne in heaven. But another way to look at his glory is if servanthood is the top priority, the other way to look at his glory is his glory was actually on the cross. And so what they're asking for, and they don't realize this, and the mom doesn't realize for this, that they don't want to be there. That's not the place where they want to be. They do not want to be in the place of service.
There was a man on either side of Jesus on the cross.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Who wanted to be that criminal on the cross next to Jesus?
Right, but if the greatest good that Jesus could do was to serve us, to lay down his life for us, then the greatest good we can do is actually to serve others, right? If we're going to talk about ourselves as following Jesus.
And if you think about it, look at all of the disciples' stories after Jesus, after the ascension and after he's gone, they do go on to kind of learn that, hey, the best thing I can do is serve. And most of them gave their lives into that service. Yeah. They were martyred for their faith.
Okay, this sounds really great, and thank you for your energy.
And theologically, it's wonderful.
I know, I can feel us getting amped up about this. Yeah, we're about the towel. Let's do it. Okay, but when does it get hard? Like, when does choosing the towel over the title get really hard?
I mean, I guess I have maybe I'll start off by answering this. I had somebody had a conversation, and I actually have this conversation a lot, that somebody like meets his friend, they want to talk to him about Jesus, and they'll say this. They say, well, Pastor, can't you just do it? And I think part of the reason why they do that is because those are hard conversations to have. Yeah. And they believe that, well, and I think they believe, because I'm theologically trained, that I can have the better conversation. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's actually true. If servanthood is actually about the relationship, then you're the right person to serve them, not me, right? Even if we're talking about a spiritual conversation, and you may not be equipped to have that and to serve, because having a spiritual conversation with somebody is serving a need that God has planted within them. And so that's the way you serve them. But that's hard. That's challenging. That's scary. Yeah. And I think that's one of the hard places. It's hard to serve.
Yeah, I think for me, it can get messy. We went to Nebraska after some flooding, and we're trying to muck mud. If you've ever mucked mud, it's terrible. Like, we're trying to take shovels and just shovel mud out, which makes more mud just drift down, and it seems endless and hard. And I think there's a reality of a messiness in our lives. I know my life, and sometimes there's a fatigue that can set in. Yeah. And to be able to push past it, because God's given me the privilege to be able to do that in this moment, to just be there. Yeah. And doesn't matter how messy. Yeah. And sometimes we got to push past that.
Yeah, and people are difficult. Like, if we're gonna serve, we're gonna have to deal with difficult people. Yeah. My neighbor hurt his back a while ago, and so he had back surgery. He's good now, but kind of this winter I shoveled his driveway some more times, and a few of us did, so it wasn't just on me. But I remember one day I'm over there doing it, and I'm like, I kind of just want to be done. Like, it's good enough. Like, but it's like, no, I gotta push through and finish this. And sometimes that's hard, and sometimes pushing through when people's lives are messy and we're serving them with relationship or telling them about Jesus, sometimes it's hard and difficult.
And to go back to our example, that's what Jesus did. He washed Judas's feet. And there was
he definitely didn't want to.
Yeah.
But he cared about him enough that he still said he needs this. He loved him, whether he liked him or not at that moment.
Well, and I think the other part of that is whether something good is going to come out of it or not. I think sometimes we serve because we want to change this personal result. Like, Jesus washes Judas' feet, and Judas never came around. Judas didn't put his hands up and like, oh, I messed this up. Jesus, he never came clean. He went through and did, the bad thing of betraying Jesus.
And he went on to take the Lord's Supper. Correct?
Yep, you had to go there, didn't you?
I did, because that's another reality, right? How do we rationalize that?
How do you serve someone when you know they don't deserve it, or you think they don't deserve it? An example that comes to my mind is back during the whole COVID shutdown thing, right? I'm out there, I helping with food distribution for our food pantry. It was a great time to get to serve, right? And you feel good serving in that way, until somebody pulls up in a BMW, and you start getting that, what is this person doing here? They don't need this food. But there's people who are, but then that really hit me, because that happened. Somebody pulls up in this really fancy car and pops the trunk. They had the thing they could push the button and the trunk opens up. And I'm going, am I really supposed to put this box of food in this person's car? And then the Holy Spirit just slapped me upside the head and says, they need it just as much as anybody else does.
Yeah, we had to have that conversation a lot during that food bank, because we had a red Tesla that would also show up, and I'm like, can I sit in your Tesla? But the conversation that we had with the volunteers was, we don't know what their journey is. And we don't know if they lost their job, if they are in massive debt. Our job isn't to judge. We just get to love and serve. You're absolutely right, Brad. And I think I've learned that getting to watch great people here serve, that we always want that posture to be a humble one, right, and not judge. And that's exactly what Jesus did. He didn't go, Judas, dude, you got some stuff coming up, man. I mean, you're about to wreck everything.
He could have told him, you go sit outside in the hall while we do this.
Oh, yeah.
But no, he didn't. He let him participate in everything all the way up to the end.
Right, and I think it goes back to, I think there's a part of it, we serve because Jesus says so, but we serve because I think also, it's the best thing for us.
Yeah.
Right? It helps us. It helps the people we're leading know that we care about them as people. It actually feeds us. There's a statistic, I used it one Sunday, that when you serve someone, it feeds your brain in the same way that food does, right? Like there's the same thing that happens in your brain when you eat as when you serve. And I think it's just fascinating that God has wired you to serve. And so we serve because Jesus says so. But we serve because we can also understand chemically and psychologically that actually serving us makes us fully human. And so I think it's got to be a part of what we do because it's a part of how God wired us. And the Bible says that, and the world around us says that, and old Chinese proverbs say that, and everything in between. But there's value in serving. But we do it because God says so.
Yeah.
So did Jesus grieve that? The brokenness of their relationship in the garden. So we say servant leadership is all built on relationship. He knew what was about to happen. He washes Judas' feet. He's there for the Lord's Supper, and then the reality of the brokenness in the garden.
Yeah.
Did he grieve it?
I have to believe that's part of his sorrow, right? It's not just that he's going to go to the cross and die in this great suffering, but also that his friends are over there sleeping. His friends that he served are over there sleeping. One of them is going to betray him, right? I think that human betrayal weighed heavy on him. And I don't think we serve to get anything out of people, but we serve because it's who God created us to be.
You look at some of Christ's last words on the cross. He didn't have much breath to speak at that point. Yet he chose to say, forgive them for they don't know what they do. That the relationship was so important to him. He's forgiving Judas because Judas didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
Judas wasn't doing it out of malice, right?
Right.
He didn't hate Jesus. He loved Jesus. And he thought, I got to push him to do this. So that's where the relationship might have been broken, but Jesus still cared about that relationship.
That's really good.
Wow. I think that's it right there. Thank you so much, guys. Great discussion. And we thank you for joining us for Jesus-Centric Leadership, and we hope you have a great day.